What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Nicholas Mason coming to you with the evening legislation solely for your mental edification. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of Mason's Corner here where we tap in, strap in, and dive deep into some of the most exo and esoteric topics of today. But today's topic weighs the ballot more than any other topic that has been discussed in the media or any social outlet that you've seen thus far. And the question that many people have yet to ask, and the question that they should direct, the question should be asked to a certain specific group and culture. But since the drop of the ball in Times Square in January 2020, it seems as if the world as we know it has begun to crumble. Threats of war, threats of impeachment, wildfires, mass shootings, the death of an icon, now threats of murder hornets and COVID-19. It's like, damn, when can a brother get a chance to breathe? Well, instead of asking him if he can breathe, he has to worry about some systemic racism. He has to worry about some indignities and some injustice that he has to deal with while everybody else is parading around and celebrating and waving their flags and banners. But here today, I brought some guests on who are going to voice their opinion, and they come from many different industries, but they all subscribe to the Black culture. Today, I have Mr. Marcus Dejean on. He's going to tell a little bit about himself. Marcus, why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself?
Peace and blessings, everyone. I want to greet you all in our native tongue. Shalom, assalamu alaikum. I am the founder of the Black United Front. It's a national socialist agenda for Black America. I'm the chairman and director of education. What I've done is I've pretty much am carrying on the legacy of a lot of our brothers and sisters in the civil rights and the movement and the struggle for liberation. Especially the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, started by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton. They laid out so eloquently a 10-point platform for our community. And again, I've just expanded on that and built on that and continuing that legacy of all of our leaders. I believe that if we're ever going to see any real progress in our community in this country as Black people, we first must take a firm stand in our education. Education is very important. What we can see now is because of this lack of knowledge, this lack of cultural heritage knowledge, and overall just a knowledge of who we are, self-esteem, it is reflecting in our communities on top of the systemic racism that has been inflicted on us for 400 years. So I feel that the first aspect of our unity is education. And it is to preach unity. That's why we are the Black United Front, because we're not looking to segregate or turn away any other Black group. We're looking to work with all Black groups that are truly interested in the upliftment of a Black community and are ready to really tackle the core philosophies and the core issues that plague our community today. So we can get into it a little bit later on, but I guess that's just my brief introduction of who I am. Absolutely. And the organization that I represent.
Absolutely. Again, Mr. Marcus, I want to thank you again. Mr. Marcus, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't get that, Mr. Marcus is the educational minister for the Black United Front. And if you want to check him out, he's going to have his Facebook drop down below. You can also check out any other social media outlets that he have, and you yourself can join his call to action with the Black United Front. Next on the line, we have a sister of theological diaspora. She's quite an entrepreneur. She's quite the motivational speaker, and she works in many different endeavors when it comes to culture and arts. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could show your love for Miss Courtney Scott. And Courtney, can you tell everybody about yourself?
Sure. I didn't know that introduction was for me, but thank you. So, I mean, I don't have as much as Marcus has, and I applaud you, sir, so much. But my name is Courtney Scott. I am the owner of the New Normal Styling Company, and I also identify as Christian. So a lot of my thoughts will be very theological, as Nick said, and I definitely am looking forward to hearing all of your views as well. I'm grateful for being here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and let's have this conversation.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Next on the line, we have someone who represents a great community that has come from a very long struggle, a very long uphill battle to find not just social justice, but civil and just the equality for understanding each other as human beings. We have Miss Treasure Jefferson on the line, and she's a representative of the LGBT community, and I want to thank her for coming on the line to speak on behalf of the community.
No, definitely. I'm just blessed to be here. I want to thank everybody for being here and just showing support and everything. I want to thank you for asking me to join as well. I'm just happy to be here, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Treasure. Next on the line, we have another sister who's very versed in when it comes to liturgical arts and just the arts itself and culture and the identity of the Black woman and Black power. We have Miss Jayla Briscoe on the line, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi. I guess to say a little bit about myself, for starters, thank you, Nick, for also inviting me to this podcast. I think it's a great thing that you are doing. And I think that we need more platforms like this to really talk about things like Black culture and what that means to us. A little bit about myself. I am a University of Baltimore graduate, and I am the owner of Sleek Spaces, which is a organizing, cleaning, and interior decorating services for residential. A little bit to add about myself, I would say that I'm just very passionate about art and using that to pretty much express my journey as an African-American woman.
Absolutely. Well, again, to all the guests who decided to come out here and voice that pain on whatever industry or whatever endeavor they subscribe to today. Today, we're going to talk about a big topic. And the topic is, what is Black? What makes me Black? What defines my Blackness? And typically, we look on the social media, we look on the news today, we see a lot of injustice, or we see us proclaimed to be the bad guy or the bad girl of the situation. Even when it comes to the church, you know, we see a lot of police brutality, but where are the preachers at? Where are the preachers speaking up? And then when you look at the LGBT community, you know, some people have gone as far as making the extension to say that Black is the gay is the new Black and Black is the new gay. And a lot of people may agree, some may disagree, but all in all, today we're going to give our guests the opportunity to speak on behalf of what they stand for and what they represent. But the first question I want to ask to all the guests out here, and I want to start with Mr. Marcus. I want you to be brief, and I want you to tell us what makes you Black, Mr. Marcus.
Well, Nick, thank you for that question. Before we can ask what makes me Black, we first have to understand the concept of Black and how this word has now become an identity for people. I'm not Black, I'm brown, or I'm melanated. So how did this byword, if you will, become the identity of a people? And when you look at it, you can't not help to notice the history in this country, slavery, and the systematic destruction of a culture. Okay. You know, before we came to America, we weren't Black. We were Muslims. We were Hebrews. We were tribe. We were Yabari. We were Magi. We were all tribal, and with our own language, heritage, and identity. Mm-hmm. So what made slavery so successful was the systematic destruction of a culture of people. So they took away our names, they took away everything we knew, they took our land, they took us from our land, they stripped us from our family, our birthrights, and everything that gave us our identity. And we became Johnson, Washingtons, Jeffersons. We became property of our oppressors.
And Marcus,
yeah,
I don't mean to interject, but I want you to tell me what makes you Black.
So,
Black?
let me get to that.
We're going to get there, but I want you to tell us, before you dive deeper, what makes you Black?
Well, again, let me just go through these layers really quickly.
Please do. Please continue.
So Black to me is our attempt as a culture to reconnect with our identity, because you got to understand the Black movement came out of the 60s and 70s. Before we identified ourselves as Black, we were Negroes. Before then, we was niggas. So as we are evolving as a people, as we are becoming more emboldened and empowering ourselves, we have adopted the phrase Black to mean Black is beautiful. Black is our identity. We have given that name to our culture, you know, and it started a whole movement. James Brown, I'm Black and I'm proud. So all of these things, we have taken this byword and we have embraced it as our culture. So what it means to me, what it means to be Black to me, is an identity of my culture, or it is a representation of my heritage.
Absolutely.
And but again, you know, just saying I'm Black, if you just say that without the substance that gives that word more meaning than just the color, it does not really quantify who we are.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I want to ask Miss Jayla. Jayla, you're a sister. You know, you're a current graduate of, you know, a great institution in Baltimore, and Baltimore has been a premier spot where it's become a location where Black Lives Matter, the protests, the marching, and the standing up and letting their voices heard, not only for a recent victim, Freddie Gray, but what do you say? What makes you Black as a Black woman out of Baltimore?
I will say, well, I'll just clarify that I'm not from Baltimore, but I did go to school in Baltimore.
Set the record straight, please.
I'm from outside of Washington, D.C., Southern Maryland. But my time being in Baltimore, the time that I spent while I was in school in Baltimore, I think that certainly helped me define and understand what I see myself as, which is Black, obviously, and help me understand that what you're asking me now. To me, very much like Marcus said, it's an indicator of our history. It's my ancestors. It's just me, you know, it's a part of who I am. And to me, I think that it speaks volumes now to proudly say you're Black and to understand why you should be happy to be Black. I think that for a long time, there was a negative connotation with that. But to me, there's so much richness. So to me, it means prosperity. To me, it means being advanced. To me, it means just loving my culture.
Excellent. Well put. Well put. Well, I think Marcus, he definitely gave a deep synopsis on what it means to be Black. And Jayla, you know, gave a proper rebuttal to, you know, piggyback off of what Marcus had said. But Marcus, and this is for everybody, and anybody can hop into the question. Marcus mentioned that, you know, Black is a part of the heritage, but historically speaking, Black, again, Marcus can attest to this, Black was something that was given to us based upon the fact that we were integrated with the already current Amawak, which was the indigenous man already here in America. Only 5% of the captives of war, or what we consider slaves, were from Africa. The other 95%, or 7 million, were current indigenous Amawak people. So my question would be to you, the Black culture that we see today, where you know, girls are very, you know, outgoing with their hairstyles and their dressing attire, and gentlemen, you know, with the tight clothes and just the one to be like these guys you see on television. Is that really what defines our Black culture? So no. Anybody can hop in.
Well, if I may, no, it doesn't. And what we also have to understand is we are not in control of our culture. We have never been in full control of our culture. Our culture has been manipulated. It has been used. It has been pimped. It has been manipulated and used to every other advantage. It has been exploited. We don't own our culture because we don't own the outlets that magnify or put out our culture. We don't own any music record labels. We don't own any distribution. We don't own any television networks. We don't own the very things that contribute to the narrative of Black.
Well, I can say this one thing, and I think Courtney can attest to this. the foundation of the church, the foundation of, you know, the reverence of God and having some spiritual connection and identity to who we are, not just as a flesh, but on the inside. And the church has been the epicenter, I would say, of the Black culture when it comes to uplifting the people and elevating them. And Courtney, what would you say to that?
I can definitely agree with you there. And I feel like it started way before, you know, we made our, or we were forced to come to America, because faith, traditionally speaking, was a part of our culture way before we made it to the Americas. So I feel like once we got here, you know, our faith did not, our idea of faith did not waver, it just changed. And I do agree with you that the church speaking was definitely the epicenter of creating some or a lot of the things we see culturally. And that's because that is one of the things we had to hold on to while all of our inheritance was taken, while all of our culture was taken away, all of our identity was taken away. Faith was one of those things that we were able to hold on to that we can say was ours, especially because faith is not something that's tangible. It's not something that someone can strip away from us. They can take away our name, they can take away our possessions, but they wouldn't be able to take away our faith. So that has been something that definitely shaped the Black culture. You know, we talk a lot about the gatherings of the slaves at night. They would have one or two people that knew how to read the Bible, or at least know how to recite what was taught to them. And it might have been taught from a very derogatory point of view, but it was something that they can gather around and gather amongst and have that sort of faith. So.
Okay. Now, Courtney, I wanted to ask this question. Now, some people who might not actually believe in the word of God, or might not believe in the Holy Bible, some people may see it as a bastardized version given to the slave. Others may see it as a historical relic that gives province to wisdom for the Hebrew nation, the people who are given to bondage, the yoke cast upon their neck for over 400 years, historically speaking. And anthropomorphically speaking, this is something that we see today. But how could you bring light to a person who doesn't believe necessarily that the Bible is something that elevated the Black community, as opposed to actually kept them in bondage?
That's a very good question. And as especially a young Black Christian and being a woman, I get that question a lot. I would say that question comes with revelation. And I know people try to pound it in the head of people that don't believe that, you know, this is what you should believe. And I'm not that kind of Christian at all. I believe that ideologies come with personal revelation. And with that question, I honestly feel like you either have the ability to believe it or you don't. Okay. It's not for me to force it in your head, you know, to believe in a lot of the churches or the Christian religion shaping a lot of the Black culture. That's either something that you believe or you don't.
Okay. That definitely makes sense. Now, just to take into the idea of, you know, piggybacking off what Courtney said about, you know, forcing people to believe in something, or if it's your choice to believe it or have that revelation, something that I've seen grossing and continuously to grow and find firm foundation is the LGBT community, and they definitely found a way to make their voices be heard. Now, to some, they don't agree with the LGBT community as far as their way of propagating and marketing their way to let their voices be heard. But Treasure, I want to ask you, how do you think is the proper way to disseminate that context when people are saying, or that quote that says, "Gay is the new Black"? How could you disseminate that type of propaganda that came up?
Honestly, just for me personally, I tell everyone, I am a Black woman before I am anything. And for me, that holds weight to the whole conversation. You cannot put those two in the same category because they don't mean anything to each other. They're not in the same family. They're not in the same group. It's not. Everyone's fighting for something. Honestly, if you look at the LGBT community, even that is a section off from each other as well. You have so many different factions. You have so many different people, and whomever they like or whoever they want to deal with or be with or whatever. There's different like systematic, just places that you put them in the hierarchy as well.
So I mean, you guys got like I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like a little Jim Crow road type of thing going on inside.
No, it's not. It's not nothing like that. But what I'm saying is, everybody's fighting for their own piece of the pie. We do come together as a whole as far as, just rights of as far as who we want to be with and who we want to love. But that has nothing to do with, Black Lives Matter and everything like that, because we're fighting for something much way bigger. We're fighting for our future. We're fighting for the future of these kids. We're fighting for, just things that we shouldn't even have to be fighting for, just equality as a whole. And those two things are just totally different, totally separate. And that's where it should be, And
Let me ask you this, Treasure.
Yeah,
I want to ask you this, and I didn't mean to interject. Now, saying that you're a Black woman, you subscribe to the Black culture, but you also subscribe to the LGBT community.
Right.
Have you faced any discrimination or any prejudice growing up, or just in your recent days from anybody as far as being accepted for who you are?
Of course, that comes with the territory.
Give me a scenario if you want to tell the viewers.
I mean, even with and I'm sorry to say this, even with the Black church. And even with the LGBT community as a whole as well. Even when I was younger, it was always the older females telling me I needed to pick who I wanted to be, how I wanted to dress, what I wanted to do. Even with the younger LGBT, like women and stuff like that, it was always you need to pick and figure out who you want to be. Even in the church, it was kind of like you need to pick a side. So it's with that, you're fighting all areas and you're trying to cover your back and trying to not get hurt, these subjects are really sensitive, and you got to watch how you present yourself because, it's someone always looking at you, whether it be someone young or old. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, my question, just one more question for you, Treasure. Now,
definitely.
Now you talk a lot, you say a lot in the context of your dialogue. You were saying that, it's different groups or categories that you subscribe to.
Right.
What category do you subscribe to for you as Treasure Jefferson?
For me, I subscribe to myself. I know that's kind of like cliche or whatever.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to put me in a category, I am a lesbian. I like women. But other than that, like people may call me a dom. I might look a little bit more dominant, But other than that, I'm myself.
That's like the masculine. You got like the tomboy swag, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But I subscribe to myself. There's different layers to different people. You get what I'm saying?
Treasure got the sauce too, y'all. Y'all better check that out. Treasure got the sauce, y'all.
No.
All right, so to Courtney, and to Marcus or anybody, when it comes to social groups, what group do you naturally subscribe to? What besides the Black culture, what do you subscribe to? And Jayla, you can start this off if you like to. Besides the Black culture, how would you describe yourself?
That's a great question. How would I describe myself outside of the Black culture?
Outside of the Black culture, Treasure subscribes as a lesbian, as a dom. So I could get the imagery in my mind of what Treasure might look like if I closed my eyes and thought about it.
Well, actually, to add on to what Treasure said, me being a bisexual woman in the African-American community,
okay,
I come from a family with a very strong Christian background, heavy Catholic, heavy Baptist. And when I was younger, they actually kind of picked up and sensed that I was into women. And I was kind of told, that's not okay. Not even kind of. I was told that it wasn't okay. I was told that I had an aunt that was gay and it wasn't accepted in our family. And I was supposed to talk to boys. So I guess growing up as a wild, that definitely changed the way I viewed religion and Christianity, because I felt kind of cast out from that community in a sort. Growing up now, obviously, is much different. And I think that there are far more open people in that religion. But aside from that, I would just say that I think that it is very much so a box that you kind of get put into and labeled. And I'm very happy that the LGBT community is fighting, and they are, you know, standing up for the people who have been affected by just trying to be who they are and genuinely love people for who they are. So I think that that is a tough thing that we face, even with the homophobia in our own communities. But I do think that it's getting better. Aside from that, I would just say groups that I would subscribe to other than the LGBT community is definitely the artistic community for sure.
Okay. Now, to just ping pong that question to Courtney. Now, we can go to Deuteronomy 28 right now. We can drop the dime and we can talk about that. But we can also go to another context and ask the question, will a man rob God? You know, and the robbing of God comes in the context of, you know, your fleshly desires. But Courtney, you want to fill us in a little bit on your perspective on just the LGBT community against the church and how that has built up over the years?
I knew we were going to get here, so I took notes already. I knew it. I was waiting.
Let's have this question. Let's have this conversation.
And it's so crazy because I actually enjoy talking about this. Most Christians kind of shy away from it. Most Christians don't like to talk about it, but I enjoy talking about it because I feel like a lot of the times Christians take a very dogmatic approach and they take a very religious approach. And while religion is good because it helps us have standards, you know, the Bible talks a lot about God speaking to people in parables and out of love. And I think that's one thing that we have not done, especially for the and I learned all these, the LGBTQIAA+ community.
Okay.
I've made it my point to learn it all.
Okay.
So, I mean, the first thing I want to do as a Christian, and I felt this, to do this, is apologize to that community because we've casted them out. We've almost had a sense of trying to save them at the door and not the altar. We've tried to tell them how wrong they were before showing them that God is love. And so I do want to apologize for that. And it's tough being young, Black, and a Christian, like I said before, because a lot of people don't even think that African Americans or Black people should subscribe to Christianity. Because
explain that.
So a lot of people feel as though Christianity, especially who God was or Jesus Christ, was given to us and it's coined as the white man's religion. Of course, I feel very differently, and I don't even feel differently from a historical point of view, but because of my interactions with Jesus Christ and Holy Spirit and the church. So again, I feel like that portion, I don't want to like go heavy on that portion, but it's all about your relationship and your experience, like your revelation.
Okay.
So jumping back to the LGBTQIAA+ community, I have to stand my ground and say that I do not agree with the lifestyle. However, it's because of the biblical backings that I have. And in the Bible, it talks about how, you know, men should not lay with men and women should not lay with women. However, we have to stop making homosexuality as the greatest sin. Because that wasn't the greatest sin in the Bible. The greatest sin, and no sin is above any other sin. The sin that God actually despises is blasphemy or blaspheming his name. And we do that all the time, but nobody considers that over top of, you know, being a lesbian or being gay or being bisexual. So I feel like we have to stop highlighting that as the church. Because, you know, I can be a liar, but nobody would know. It's because that those sins, like getting pregnant before marriage is another one. Those are sins that are visible, right? But what about those sins that nobody can tell unless you say it, you know?
Okay.
And so it's so much to talk about here.
I mean, we can dive into it, but I mean, just to paraphrase and, you know, to the viewers who are watching, the understanding of the church, I don't subscribe to any religion, but I subscribe that I'm a man of God. And the man of God, the Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. I'm a man of principle. So you can judge a man not by the content, not by the color of his skin, but by the content and the character that he keeps. That's Martin Luther King said that. And that goes back to the principles that you are. And then the rulers of this dark place lurking, these rulers of this dark world lurking in high places, that construct. But to Marcus, I want to throw that to Marcus. When it comes to the church, we know historically speaking, the slave masters would take the intelligent house slave or take one of the slaves and educate him to the fact of making the other slaves more docile. And then we can also talk about the LGBT community when it comes to bucking, bull bucking, where the slave master would have the biggest, largest, strongest man on the plantation, and he would strip him naked, tie him down, and then rape the man, anally rape the man in front of all his women, his children, and his other comrades. But Marcus, if you would like to voice your opinion on this, and how has this molded us into the culture that we are as a Black culture?
Well, first we got to understand that Christianity was given to us through slavery. It was never given. It was never given to us to uplift us. They gave us Christianity, but told us we couldn't read. So they gave us a book to worship, but then told us we couldn't read it. And if we ever tried to read it, we would get killed. Okay, so, and before, let me just say, before slavery was even sanctioned, the Portuguese and the Spaniards had to go to the Pope because Christianity was a sin. I mean, slavery was a sin. But they had to figure out, well, how can I enslave these Africans and not be sinful? So they went to the Pope, and the Pope decreed that, well, the Africans, they're not human, so you can enslave them. And once they got that decree from the Pope, that began the great slave trade. So Christianity was used for slavery. It was never used for our benefit. Again, they took the people that were written in the Bible, which is us, and, you know, what we didn't understand is this Bible is a living ledger of our ancestry and bloodline. So, you know, and they perverted that word. And it wasn't until, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years until we were able to read and educate ourselves that we could even come to this thing. And it says in the Bible, it says that the circumcision of the heart, God talks about the circumcision of the heart.
You better get it right now. We got an evangelist on the line. She's gonna correct.
No, that's good. Where you're going is good.
Come on, Marcus. Now finish what you're saying, brother.
So I just want to bring it all in because we kind of touched on everything. And you know, me myself, I don't consider myself a Christian because Christianity was a slave religion and it was used to keep us in slavery. You know, I do identify culturally as a Hebrew Israelite, and if I was to attain a religion, I consider myself a Muslim. Because Muslim was our religion before we got on that ship. You know, Muslim, if you look at Islam, Islam is a very beautiful religion. Islam is merely the submission to the will of Allah. And Islam, it mentions all the prophets in the Bible. It holds Jesus at highest regard. So we were robbed of this knowledge. And when we understand, this goes back to understanding who we are as a people, you know. So I have a lot of problems with the Christian church. You know, it was a pillar of the community out of slavery because this is, you know, the church's position in Reconstruction and Jim Crow was very important. It was very important for Harriet Tubman. You know, through the Underground Railroad, most of her stops were Black churches. So the church had a very powerful position. Dr. King started his whole civil rights movement in the 50s, the Freedom Ride, out of the church. So the church is a pillar of the Black community. However, when I look at the church today, when I look at the pastors today, and I see what's happening, they are not teaching God's word. They are making a profit of it. They are making money from it, you know, and
hold up now.
I have a problem with it, and I call it like I said it. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm gonna call a spade now.
I have to interject when you're done.
Hold on.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm good. No, you're good.
Hold on.
And so let me just wrap this up and say that you know, the basis of my organization is just this. I am not here to demonize any of our Black philosophies or religions, cultures, or practices. I'm here to unify them. You know, we need the black churches to bring it back.
Even the Bible?
We need the Bible, we need the Quran, we need the Torah, we need the Neturah, we need the Egyptian philosophy, we need everything that identifies this entire, let me tell you something, this entire book is about us. So the more we embrace the word, and even in a spiritual sense or in a cultural sense, the embracing of this word, the understanding of the teachings of the prophets has to be on the forefront of all of us, because we have to understand we are living in a time where these prophets, we are the prophets. Why do you think that this country is going on a genocide reign, killing black men? Do you know why they're killing black men? Because they are trying to stop a Messiah from coming amongst our people.
Now, Courtney, I want Courtney to pick up and take off where you were saying and where you wanted to interject that, and let your voice be heard, if you would.
Sure. So, Marcus, thank you so much. And again, I live for these conversations, man. Now, I do have to disagree that Christianity was a slave religion. And the only reason is because, you know, we can look at, now I don't have exact dates in that, and I apologize for my ignorance, but we can look at history and tell that there was some forms of believing in Yahweh or Yeshua in Africa, or, you know, in that continent. An example of that would be when Jesus was bearing the cross on Calvary. There was a person that helped him named Simeon, who was from Cyrene, which is in
Syria.
Right.
Ethiopia, yeah.
Right. So it's just like, you know, we can't say that Christianity was not a part of the culture of Africans or, you know, black people.
No. I was never saying that, because Christ's bloodline is in our bloodline. But what I'm saying is, by the time Christianity is indoctrinated through the Catholic faith and through Rome, once Rome decreed it to be a religion, you know, they didn't put all of the canons in the Bible. You know, it was, the Bible was orchestrated. Christianity, the word and the philosophy of Christianity was constructed after the Council of Nicaea,
which is in 25 AD.
And the reason was that because Constantine was faced with a problem. He had uprisings and rebellions all through Judea. So he said, if I can't beat them, I'm going to join them and convert all of Rome. It didn't matter what faith Rome was. He didn't care as long as he collected tax from the people. So what we have, now let's fast forward another 500 years, when you have the spread of the Catholic Church all throughout Europe. Okay. And
why
then we
was
can
that?
get into it. Why is that?
Yes, sir.
Well, the Catholic Church is nothing but a remnant of the Roman Empire. That is all the Catholic Church is.
Disseminate that for them, if you would. The Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church, the diocese, the Catholic Church itself, the Pope is the last remnant of the Roman Empire. You got to understand, when you're looking at the fall of Rome, how did Rome fall? Well, it imploded on itself through corruption, and eventually their borders collapsed. And so at the time, Rome was seen as such a cosmopolitan city. Everybody wanted to be Rome. They wanted to keep Rome. Even after Rome fell, the Byzantine Empire said this is the new Rome. You see, so Rome was very cosmopolitan. So when the German raiders and the barbarians even made it to the steps of Rome, you know, the last Caesar of Rome pretty much welcomed them in, and the way they preserved it was through their Catholicism. So that is the rule. So when you look at, you have to really understand the forming of Christianity. And I'm not trying to down my Christian brothers and sisters. I definitely am not doing that. But what need to understand is how the main reason that made me question Christianity is, how can a religion that preaches love and unity and equality can be used for some of the most barbaric and inhumane acts? How can Christian Spaniards and Portuguese enslave people? How could a Pope decree that a people were not human? So you have to understand. And then going back to the Crusades, the first, second, and the third Crusades.
You gonna get me started, dog? We can go there. I want to hop in a second. Finish what you're saying, and I'm gonna say.
I just want to say that, you know, Minister Farrakhan said one time, "How dare you use the beautiful word of God to create your gutter religion. And he got a lot of flack for that. And what he was saying is, how dare you use God's word to do your evil? But you know, God said in the Bible, if I may go into Revelations 1 really quickly, he said, he told you, he pretty much let us know in these times that we're living in, I believe it's Revelation, he said, and I know the blasphemy of them, which say that they are Jews, and they are not, but they are the synagogues of Satan. So you had these people professing they know God, but they knew him not. So, and when we say that, they created this whole philosophy, and that very philosophy is what put over 100 million black souls into bondage. Now, we can understand this in
Marcus, if I may, now I wanted to. Now we were talking about Constantine in 25 AD when it comes to the Council of Nicaea, and that talks about when all the European cultures, if you don't know, this was in 25 AD. This is after Christ had died. This is 25 years after Christ had died. This is during the time that it was a lot of imperialism going along, and it was a lot of rebellion going along throughout.
And who were rebelling? Who were rebelling?
Now, historically speaking, these were people of melanin descent. They were rebelling based upon, I say this a lot in my videos I make, truth is a force of nature. You can't touch it, you can't see it, but it's something you feel. Not by might, not by power, but by the spirit. It is an essence, it is an aura that overcarries you. But now what I wanted to say is, now you say that the Catholic Church was the last remnant of the Roman Empire. Now the Roman Empire, they performed a lot of pagan acts, even orgies with little boys and men and all that sort. Now this is for the LGBT community, and I wanted to project this on to the LGBT community. If Treasure could answer this question. And anybody, Courtney, Jayla, you can hop in afterwards as well. A lot of people say that they're born gay, or that they were born this way when it comes to identifying their sexuality. When it comes to pedophilia and the indoctrination and teaching kids sexual acts from a very young age, or perversion from a very young age, could you, and this is directed toward anybody from the LGBT community, whether it be Jayla or Treasure, could you really say that you were born this way, or was that some type of diluted perversion that was presented to you, whether it be television, music from another family member, or something you just happened to see that blew your mind?
So I'll answer that question for you. For me, I feel like as far as these kids shows and them wanting to introduce another lifestyle, I am totally against it. For me,
wow,
I don't
say that.
I'm totally against it because I don't know. It's just like I said, I was born Baptist. I was in church Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for choir rehearsal. You know, so but for me, I'm a little against it because for me, I'm not gonna say that I was born gay, but it was just something, you know, inside of me that was just a little bit different. I'm not gonna say I was born gay. And then if you ask my grandmother, she'll say, you know, if a woman is pregnant and she keeps saying, I want to have a boy, I want to have a boy, I want to have a boy, and it turns out to be a girl, they have placed something on that child. So I mean, exactly. So for me, it's kind of like you have to give these children just protect their innocence as a whole. Like you say, even perversion and stuff like that. Like you got to watch how people retain things, especially children, because they retain a lot of things. I'm totally against it just for the fact that you have to know what you're getting yourself into, and if you can make that decision, you should make it while you're grown, not when you're 5 and you're 4. You really don't know what's going on.
How old were you when you found out and you decided to say that, hey, I'm a lesbian, this is my lifestyle?
I told my mother when I was 16, but there were things that led up to that. For me, I never saw a dude and I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. There was none of that. There was like, oh, okay, you're cool. And you want to tell me a secret so you can deal with him? Okay, that's cool. So I was the middleman. I was like, okay, I just want to play basketball, but y'all keep wanting to talk to me. I don't know what's going on, but hey, yeah, like that's what it was, honestly.
Now, Jayla, I'm going to just say this. I think for people who consider to be bisexual, I think they selfish as hell. You can't decide if you want a man or a woman. So, Jayla, I want you to tell me, because you're grabbing both ends of the spectrum, when did you know that you were bisexual, or when did you experience that this is who you are as a bisexual woman?
I would say that I knew very early on, like when I was in grade school. Just as a little background, as a child, I was definitely a victim of several forms of abuse, specifically sexual abuse. And I think that that definitely played in a lot towards me pulling away from men, but not purposely. I think from a protective standpoint, because I wasn't protected by men, I think that subconsciously that set down in my head, and that made me feel as though I just kind of would gravitate naturally towards women.
Now, Taylor, if I may, I didn't mean to interject just so swiftly. Were you did you experience the act from a male or from a female?
I would say both in a sense, because technically both, I would say in a sense, but more so emphasis on the male aspect of it, like older males or whatever. That was more so my situation with abusers. Now looking back at the time when I noticed and I started showing interest in girls or women, I would say that some of those women were older, not necessarily 10 years or maybe like 3 or 4 years. So maybe it could have been wrong. But I definitely knew that I liked them, and that, you know, I like women. It's just hard. It's just an innate feeling that you know that like you're attracted to this person. And I just look at it as, if I would want to be in a relationship with a man and a woman, then I'm bisexual. I know it's very selfish of me.
That's selfish as hell, by the way.
To not be able to not with polyamory, but that's another discussion. So I definitely get it, but I think that it is a very real thing, and I think that, you know, it's okay. It's nothing wrong with it necessarily. That's the great part of the LGBTQ community.
Okay. Now to Courtney, LGBT community definitely has that voice heard. I think some churches are actually endorsing, you know, legalizing marriages, and some churches are openly, and even, you know, historically speaking, you know, you got the sweet little boys in the choir singing, swaying back and forth. You know, you got the strong, firm female usher in the back that'll hit you in the back of your head with a fan. And then, you know, you got you see the remnants of the LGBT community in the church, but how do you handle it in your day-to-day life, being a Christian that you are, and a daily churchgoer that you are?
I think I can kind of refer back to what I was saying in handling every situation in love. Now to Treasure's point, the Bible does say that we were, you know, born into sin and shaped in iniquity. So I feel as though some people can have, you know, because we were born into sin and shaped in iniquity as the Bible subscribed, I don't cancel out people feeling like they were or they're attracted to the opposite sex very young. I don't cancel that at all. And I also feel as though, like the scripture that you quoted earlier, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. One of the things the kingdom of darkness has a grip of is perversion, taking our likes, our interests, and perverting them or twisting them, and giving us suggestions. People always say that the devil made me do it. The devil can't make us do anything, but he can give us suggestions, and we can take our free will and move forward to those suggestions. So for me, the way that I encountered the LGBT community, first of all, I want to get to a point where you don't feel like I'm preaching at you, but let's have a conversation. Just like Jayla subscribed, a lot of the LGBT community, not all, but a lot of them, just as well as people, the LGBT community compared to those who were called thots, or, you know, those who are, you know, very promiscuous, they deal a lot with perversion because of rejection and abandonment. And when you have rejection issues and abandonment issues,